control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthology with your host Mark, and today I'm joined by Sam. Hi Sam.
Hey.
Hey, so Night Gallery, you often join me in the Night Gallery episodes. So this one is season 2, episode 2. We didn't have a great time with episode 1 of season 2, did we? Apart from we both really liked the Phantom of What Opera, the Leslie Nielsen segment in that episode. That was good. However, this one is episode 2, and there are 4 stories in this one. They're really cramming in. First aired 22nd of September 1971. Okay, so there's 4 stories. Too long, too short, right? That's how it kind of plays out. First one is Death in the Family. Well, this is an interesting one. All 4 segments were directed by Jeannot Schwartz. I think that's how pronounced the name. He's a French director, Schwartz. He was probably most famous for directing Jaws 2, which wasn't great, but also things like Santa Claus the Movie, which has an interesting director's eye. Not a great film, I don't think, but a weird film, but it's directed okay. Yeah. And he comes from the same school as Steven Spielberg in that he directed things like episodes of Columbo and stuff, which Steven Spielberg did. And they're the same era, really. And he directed all 4 segments we're going to be talking about tonight. So that's interesting. This first one was written by Rod Serling, based on a short story by Miriam Allen DeFord. Death in the Family. It starts with like an old guy having no mourners, and like the funeral director being disgusted that they haven't even paid for mourners to come to the funeral, and all they've done is paid for the box and the hole in the ground and the service, $100. And he says, "Oh mate," and we see him kind of say things like, "Oh no, he'll go on for it. It won't be just this; it'll be eternity," or something like that. Though it's a bit suspicious. Now this guy's played by E.G. Marshall. What do you think of his performance here?
He was pretty good.
Solid,
the other fellow that shows up later, not so much.
Not so much. Desi Arnaz Jr., the son of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. He's a bit soft looking, and he's supposed to be a hardened criminal, and he's kind of looks like a pretty boy, really. It's okay, but it doesn't quite work, does it? That's the thing. But I like this stage set. Some of the music was a bit weird, but I like the stage setting. But E.G. Marshall is basically his funeral director who, we're going to spoil this, has set up all of these corpses he should have buried, but he's kept alive and presumably stuffed or undergone taxidermy, because they're sitting around a table and he's singing "Who for He's a Jolly Good Fellow." That's how it all starts off. Desi Arnaz Jr. Yeah, Desi Arnaz Jr. is an escaped criminal who's been shot, so he's wounded and bleeding out. And the police, we actually see the police stop him, don't we? Stop the funeral director and sort of warn him. And he's in his own home, and the guy comes in and can hear him singing and wants to know what it's about. And then eventually he stumbles across him in this room full of cadavers, who he introduces as his family, I believe.
Yeah. And the old guy that he sort of supervises the funeral of at the start is his father. So.
And he's got a mother, and he's got a daughter, and has he got a wife? I can't remember that. But it's all that. And this guy who's bleeding out freaks right out. But then the police are kind of knocking, and it's like, look, don't worry, I'll protect you. Just come down here and all this. But it's just too weird for him, and it freaks him. He does pass out for a bit, doesn't he? And he kind of wakes up and sort of sees what's going on. And then here's the singing and creeps down and sees what's going on. And it's a very odd scene. They're dressed up as like for a birthday party, right? The corpses have got party hats on.
They word it as like my father's homecoming.
Yes. So E.G. Marshall is nuts, completely bananas in this. And this criminal who's been given 99 years, we find out, don't we, for something, attempted murder or something. It's going to hold up with him, and he's too wounded to get away or do much else. And in the end, he shoots the funeral guy, doesn't he? They kind of struggle because
no. Wait, what happens?
Eventually,
I think
the criminal shoots him, right?
I think he dies, and then the police walk in, and they shoot him. I can't remember.
No. He kind of says you've got to put the gun down, all this, and that he accidentally shoot. I don't think maybe not accidentally, but he shoots the funeral director in a way that he kind of lives a little longer than the criminal. And the police stumble in. They hear gunshots and they sort of rush in. And they come across this weird scene, which is almost like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of scene of this corpse is dressed up, and E.G. Marshall kind of is bleeding, but he stands up and he goes, we're just having a little party, officers, for my father, my mother, my daughter, and my brother. And he introduces the guy that's just died as the brother, right? And then it fades out. It's kind of an interesting story. I liked it. What do you think?
No, wait. It doesn't just fade out. The cops sort of slowly back away and close the door.
Back away. You can't blame them.
It's just excellent. Like, I'm not dealing with this sort of.
Yeah. You can't blame them, right? You can't blame them. Yeah, not a bad segment. Any thoughts?
No. It just sort of was a story. It wasn't even that like scary or punchy. It's just it
was just weird. It was just weird.
Yeah.
That was his thing.
Especially because they kind of had the reveal of like he's keeping corpses very early on.
Yeah.
But they didn't really show it as like didn't show it as like he was doing this family whole deal. But it was already, we knew he was keeping corpses, so it wasn't that much of a jump to assume, he's just kept a lot of corpses.
The revelation was more other characters discovering what he was doing rather than us, the audience, discovering what he was doing, wasn't it, really? That's kind of how it played out. Written by Rod Serling, this one, so yeah, okay.
That kind of surprises me.
Yeah, it doesn't feel quite like a Rod Serling one, does it? Because there's kind of no twist. It's just odd. It's just odd. The next one was a short one called The Merciful, written by Jack Laird, the producer of the series. And Jack Laird would often write these little short ones. He was responsible for the horrific Miss Lovecraft sent me. So he wrote The Merciful. Yeah, so it's a husband and wife. It appears the wife's sort of appears to be creating a brick wall between her and her husband, and she's saying, when we got the result, it was a bad idea, but this is a much better way. It'll be much more peaceful. And the husband's just sitting in a chair, kind of grimacing. But she's
also saying stuff like, the oxygen will just sort of stop in a while, so you'll faint before you actually. Yeah. So
it'll be a peaceful one, so it appears that she's bricking him up, but then the doorbell goes or something, and he gets up and he goes upstairs to answer it, kind of thing. Yeah. So she's actually bricking herself in. Now that's the twist. Yeah. Now get this: the couple in this were actually married in real life, so it's a real husband and wife. How about that? That's interesting. Yeah. That's about the only interesting thing, really. It's based on a story also called The Merciful by someone called Charles L. Sweeney, which is really, and that story is also kind of a version of Edgar Allan Poe's A Cask of Amontillado, actually. It's very similar. It was okay. It wasn't dreadful, but it was okay. That's about...
At least it had a twist.
Yeah, Yeah, and as you picked up, it's using the same scenes, settings, and scenery as the first one.
It's the same set.
It's the same set, pretty much, just dressed slightly different, right? Yeah. Okay, so the next one was also written by Rod Serling, called The Class of 1990. Sorry, no, Class of 99, set in 1999, which is always interesting to see stuff, try and predict what the future will be like.
My favourite is
especially when we're past
2002, where people are exploring the far reaches of the universe.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. So this is 1999, and it's a kind of weird graduation class conducted by like a professor doing verbal testing of the students, played by Vincent Price. Great turn by Vincent Price, I'd say. Actually, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Actually.
He was kind of engaging and electric, wasn't he? You know, you kind of watched him, and the students played off of him well.
Choice of words, to be honest.
But we were trying to work it out because basically he was getting. First, he started asking him about propulsion, and one guy got he had a 4-part question. He had to name 4 people, and he only named 3. So the professor told him to sit down, but he got a bit stroppy. And Vincent Price was like, "Sit down, Mr. So-and-so, before you make an even bigger fool of you." You know, there's all that kind of stuff. But as it goes on, it got weirder and weirder. It started talking about social interactions, and this was quite Rod Serling, actually. And you actually picked up that the scene setting, they showed like an outside shot, looked a lot like
Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, where I think was filmed around that California University, and they use that as an opening shot. Now, there's an interesting connection there because Rod Serling actually wrote the screenplay for the first Planet of the Apes. How about that? So there's a connection. And actually, the twist in this was kind of Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, a little.
They did it, you fools. You know, there's all that. The twist in this is we find anyway. There's some weird social interaction stuff. At first, it's a white. Is it a white guy and a black guy?
And a black guy, and then it's 2 women of different like economic
classes.
standing.
Yeah. One's like white trash, and the other's like posh, and they kind of slapping each other, and he goes, "What's your reaction to slap?" You know, to one to the other. He goes to slap him, and he goes, "Why don't you do it?" And all this, and there's some weird stuff going on. But then it gets even darker. He says to one, "Can you see an enemy?" And it's like an Asian guy. Now you got to remember this was the height of the Vietnam War as well. When this was recorded, and he goes, "What do you do to your enemy?" He goes, "You kill him." And they give this first guy a gun. And then in the end, he goes, "I can't kill him. I'm not sure he is my enemy." And it's like, and Vincent Price starts frowning, and essentially he says, "Turn them off." And we find out they're all androids.
Yeah.
So these androids are being sort of tested for their belief systems, it appears, right? And then and in the end, the guy that got the question wrong does shoot the guy that's decides he doesn't want to kill his enemy because even worse, he's a traitor.
Yeah.
This is all sounding very modern, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
He graduates, and when he shoots the other guy, he gets shot in the face, and we see it's like an android face, which we see a lot in anthology series. We saw this in one of the episodes from the Twilight Zone of someone getting shot in the face, and it's an android face. So that's a kind of a familiar thing on American TV. And then there's a speech about, we're going to carry forward the seeds of humanity. So these androids are like humanity's future because humanity have destroyed themselves in some way. So an interesting. I like this one. It was very different.
It was weird. It was mostly carried by Vincent Price because the others couldn't really act that well. So
I mean, I thought they were okay. I thought the black.
But to be fair, they were supposed to be robots. So.
Yeah, they were kind of acting robotic. I thought the black dude was pretty good, and I thought the working class woman was pretty good. Okay. But Vincent Price carried it, like you say. Yes. Okay, so that's the third story. The fourth one. Now, this is interesting. The fourth one is called Satisfaction Guarantee, but it's actually in the original airing of this episode. It was called Witch's Feast, which we'll probably get onto at some point. Now, that one was deemed to be so terrible, So can you imagine how bad it has to be if they let Miss Lovecraft sit in there? That they replaced it with this segment, which was also first aired as like in the last episode of season 2, but it was sort of cut around and put into here. Interestingly, that meant that original segment, which wasn't directed by Jenna Schwartz, became a segment that was directed by Jenna Schwartz because he did Satisfaction Guaranteed. Satisfaction Guaranteed, also written by Jack Laird, so kind of keeping up the was. Yeah. Here we have Victor Buono, most famous as King Tut from Batman, a secretarial agency where the woman is going on about how proud they are of their record of always guaranteeing satisfaction for their clients in not one case in 25 years of a client not being satisfied. And she starts bringing in secretaries of all sorts of really high qualified, and Victor Buono's going nah. And these secretaries, the first one's kind of young and pretty and slim.
The second one's kind of the same but brunette.
Yeah, but a bit older, and the woman actually says, yes, I know what you mean. Someone too attractive can be quite distracting, so I'll bring in the next one. But she's a good-looking woman as well. But yeah, Vince Bono's nah. And then she brings in various people, and then he's going, no, I won't do it at all. And then he's sitting there, and this quite big, large woman comes in and starts.
She's the actual secretary.
And she's going, oh no, that's the one. And she said, but she can't type. Her shorthand's terrible. Her cough is terrible. And Victor Bono's like, no one's perfect. There's all that kind of stuff. But she is large, right? She says,
the entire time during this, Victor Buono is getting stuff out of his briefcase.
Yes.
Just like you can't see it, but he's putting stuff on the table.
Yeah, and she says, I cannot give you this one. It won't be. He goes, remember your motto, satisfaction guaranteed. And my check says otherwise. And he writes her a check, gives it to her, and she looks at it. He's like, whoa. And then he gets a knife and fork out. Yeah. He says, and she says, where do you want her to start Monday? He goes, no, I'll eat her here. He says, as he gets his knife and tucks her nose. And then it ends. Yeah, so this is goofy as hell, right? Goofy as hell. Got a good audience reaction, this one. People like this one.
I'm very surprised. It was more just sort of a, huh?
I think it was because it was comedy, and I think these little short punchy ones, when they work, they're very memorable, like Phantom Warp. When they don't, they're either terrible or you're just forgettable. But when they work, they kind of are more memorable than the longer ones, maybe? I don't know. But it got a good rate. I liked Victor Buono. I thought he played it well. Apparently, the first fan mail, the woman who was running the agency, an actress, fairly old actress, she said, I got fan mail about that episode, and it freaked me out that there were people out there who actually like that sort of thing and want to write to me. So it freaked her out. Yeah, how about that? This was before comic conventions and stuff, I assume. So, all you got was fan letters. So 4 stories. Which one did you like best?
Honestly, none of them really struck me as very good. Probably the Victor Price one was.
Vincent
Price. Oh.
Yeah, I like the Vincent Price one a lot. Yeah, it was interesting. It didn't feel particularly dated. Even usually things set in the past that try and predict the future, and we're even beyond that future now when we watch it back, seem goofy. But this one actually worked because it was like 2 sets, right? That was it, and they kept it fairly. Yeah, I like this. I thought Death of the Family was okay as well. Didn't mind that. But the payoffs weren't great in any of them. So it was an okay one. So it's kind of feeling that season 2 is not up to the standard of season 1 so much.
Oh, by far, no.
Apart from maybe Phantom of Opera, because it was kind of quite endearing, wasn't it, Al?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll wind it up there. Any final thoughts on these 4?
No.
Okay, then. Okay, so goodbye from me.
Bye.
And one last thing. May I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to